Good morning, Mike. Happy Friday. Happy May
Hey,
1st. How you doing?
a new month, a new Friday, another weekend coming.
Another
How you
weekend
feeling,
coming, man.
Steve? How you
I'm
feeling?
feeling I'm feeling good, but I am looking forward to that weekend coming.
Yeah,
What about you? What about you? How you
it's
doing?
um same. I definitely look forward to the weekends. People would joke, what's the difference? It's Saturday, Sunday, it's Monday, it's Tuesday. But for me, it's different. I definitely put
Yeah.
myself in a different category and try to relax and have some fun. Whereas the weeks are so busy. And again, I'm blessed. You're blessed to be able to be busy during the week. There are many where the days truly are blurring together because they have literally their world has been shut down. So uh, that's the thing we always have to remember when talking to people. I think the people we're talking to here in the workplace world, most of them are like us. They're continuing to work as remote workers, but the emotions are different. The cognitive load is different. My favorite term these days, and therefore we have to be careful to check ourselves and stay well. So I hope you're doing
Yep.
that.
No, I am. And today being May 1st, each day representing a new thing.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh
let's have
boy.
a chat about what is May 1st. Well, first of all, it's the Global Love Day. So let's share some love. It is International Workers' Day.
All right.
School bus drivers day. The list goes on, man. It's just crazy how many things there are. But the other one is probably
Wow.
important for a lot of people. It's school principals day. So
All
there we
right.
go.
Let's give
And
a
there's a
shout
few
out to
more.
the school principals. Cheers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, so there we go.
Actually,
There is
all
no.
the workers at schools these days. My wife among them. She is an office manager at a school here in our area, and she works harder now than I. Well, I didn't go to school with her. Didn't know what she did on a regular basis, but they are doing an amazing job keeping things going with the virtual learning, and I'm sure it's an incredible challenge to keep those kids, paying attention. I can't imagine what that's like on Zoom meetings, but yeah, shout out to all those teachers and everyone who's had to adapt to this new environment.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as we move into a new month, May represents a number of, months. Represent the one I really think that's probably most apt for you and I. May is Hamburger Month. So there you
Yes, now
go.
we're talking.
Yes,
If
yes.
that's on
So
that's actually on the menu
that's
tomorrow night. We're gonna do a little
lucky.
barbecue with the
Well,
kids. We're gonna
funny,
have
funny you
my
said
grown
barbecue.
children over. Yeah,
Funny you said barbecue. It's also barbecue month, so tis
awesome.
that season. So yeah, so we'll definitely look into that. And the more I think about it, even though it is only 8 a.m. in the morning, the thought of a hamburger does feel good.
Yeah. When's
Um,
the last time you
so
had a
uh,
good hamburger?
it's been a while, man. It has been a while. It's been
None,
haven't
none
done
have
since
been
the
delivered
lockdown.
to you, I don't imagine, right? So
No, no, nothing been delivered.
yeah.
I do like a good burger. I can't remember. Oh,
Well,
anyway, we got to.
I'm having my kids over, as I said. They're grown. They're living on their own, and they're among the less vulnerable among us population wise. Although they've been pretty much isolated too, and they've been living by the careful standards of social distancing. We're all locked down still here in the DC area, Virginia. I know other parts of the country are beginning to reopen, but I don't worry about them being exposed. They do work. Some of them have to work because of their government jobs, so they do have a requirement to go into offices. But they're learning. And I'm
Mm,
hearing. I want to hear more this weekend from some of the staggered shifts and some of the things that are being done to make them feel comfortable at work. But I haven't really hugged them for over a month, so I'm going to hug them this weekend. I'm deciding based on the new data that's coming in and the fact that we are maybe, if I look at it this way, if I look at it, the reopening of society in the coming weeks and months will expose them more to a normal life and a lot more people in the general public. What about this thought? The fact that right now, maybe the most safe it is to hug them, because for someone like me who's
mhm.
older and maybe a little more vulnerable due to some underlying conditions, um, if I'm going to hug my kids, now's the time as opposed to a month from now or 2 months from now when they're in the middle of being all active and out there in the public again. What do you think?
No, absolutely. It's I see the excitement in your face as you think about that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. But I think your logic is makes sense to me. Absolutely. Absolutely, man. That's good. That's good. I look forward to hearing about that on Monday. But yeah, so what else you got planned for your weekend?
Well, No other
Not
plans
much.
other than that.
Good.
We're gonna
Good.
relive. We're gonna watch some videos of them as kids going to Disney World, since
Ah,
we're not going to
nice.
Disney World later this month. May The end of May was going to be our big trip, but that's obviously been
Mm,
postponed to 2021. So we have that to look forward to. But we're going to kind of reminisce, go backwards in time, and look at some old videos, and that'll be fun. But I came coming off this week. There's so much we didn't get a chance to talk about. Every day is a day to reflect, and yesterday I had another great meeting with friends in our community and our facility management and workplace community from the Capital chapter of IFMA. We had one of our happy hours virtually. And I love that format. That we can even do more with it, I think, but we're doing a great job with the Zoom. 30, 40 people get on a Zoom call, and then you break into little sessions and have these more
yeah.
intimate conversations. And that may be one of the keys to future collaboration tools and ways to create some of those serendipitous, interactions. But um, the surprise coming out of that, Steve, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is it kind of aligns with some of the things we've teased here and chatted about here. Is this last week or two has been a lot of conversation about the reentry plan, the return to workplace plans, and those are all very important conversations. But I was surprised that a couple of our FM friends, at least for some smaller organizations who are all knowledge workers, were like, we're not going back anytime soon. And we've decided it's okay. We're just very functional. We're working well together online, and there's no rush to get back to the office. So it may be mid to late summer before we even consider venturing back into the building. So my question to you was, and maybe it's a continuation of our previous discussion, are we asking the wrong question? Should we just be more focused on this being the new normal, this world we're living in today? At least for some of us, it may be the long-term new normal, and the question should not be around the focus on going back into the built environment, but the making the best of this virtual environment. And you've teased that before. You've talked about that before. Have
Yeah.
you heard from others that similar sentiment, that let's just start making the most of this new opportunity as if it's the normal opportunity?
Yeah, just to clarify one thing though, whenever you said them returning to the office, this is their companies have made a decision, or they
Yeah,
individually, their companies?
companies. This is
Companies.
where it's,
Okay.
again, smaller companies, but they're
Yeah.
all in a position of being able to work from home.
Yeah. And I have heard that from a lot of organizations, more and more. I've also heard organizations taking the opportunity, smaller organizations, especially in the UK, who have taken the opportunity to actually to not go back to an office. So in other words, they're found having a distributed workforce working from home. Actually, they are as productive, and they've elected not to return to the office. So there is those. But getting back to your question, what do I think? I mean, I think organizations, they're going to do the right thing for the organization and for the employee base as a whole. They're going to provide options and opportunities for those who want to go back. And then there will be those that want to stay from home. And I think many organizations will provide those. If you ask me personally what it is I want to do, well, I want to continue working from home. So just to make that sort of distinction. And
Yeah.
I think that's really what most people, I think most organizations are going to leave it for the individual to decide. But I think the organizations also feel a responsibility to allow those to go back to the office who want to go back. There are many geographies where things haven't been as to the same levels as what we have seen in New York City or Washington or Virginia, where you are, or in LA or other parts of the world. There are other uh, uh, states, cities that really haven't been as exposed. So I can
Right.
understand, the emotions there are probably not quite the same as what they may be in New York City.
And the data is coming in now to change some of those emotions, I hope. I don't know what's going to happen. I think, and you and I've talked about this as well, I think people are so fearful that even in Georgia, that they opened, last week, and a lot of other places opening today, because May 1st is when the national guidance here in the US about lockdown has been lifted. So it's state to state, and there's let's say half the country, or not quite that, half the country is reopening in some capacity in the next month, in this month of May, throughout the month of her different dates. But that doesn't mean the people are going to go back to restaurants. The people are going to go back to those barbershops. The people are so afraid because of the media portrayal of this thing. And I have mixed feelings about it, Steve. I really do. I've always said I want more data. I always want to know what the facts are. And I think we're very much all buying in based on the facts we were presented 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago. And I believe we flattened the curve, and it's not over by any means. And I think the true thing is that the data is showing it's not going to be over. There is no end date. There is no cure to COVID-19, at least no vaccine. And although there's some promising signs again on therapeutics with remdesivir, is that what it is? Very exciting news these last couple of days. So all
Yeah.
those data points are coming in, and these studies are showing, with the antibody testing going on throughout the world, that a lot more people have been exposed to this coronavirus than we initially thought, and therefore that denominator is much higher. We've talked about this, and therefore the death rate, the risk factor is much lower. So putting that back into perspective for people is going to be tough. I think once that genie left the bottle, or the horse left the barn of fear, getting people back to a level of, okay, this is a manageable risk. I can go back to some normal life. Yes, be careful. Yes, be mindful of social distancing rules and protocols, but let's get back to work. Let's get back to the office. Let's get back to restaurants. That's going to be a hard sell for people. And I don't know how we fix that, because the economy and now the other data piece that's coming in, I get really upset when I see it, is the economic impact of this. Over 30 million people on unemployment now here in the US. I'm sure it's that way across the globe. Just
Yeah.
devastating. And the families that are impacted by that, and the other health ramifications of not doing normal medical routine testing and cancer screenings and heart attacks, people being afraid to go to the hospital. Boy, I can go on and on, but that's not about workplace, but it affects the workplace, because if people are so afraid to leave their homes because they've been told that if they walk out the front door, they're going to die or kill somebody else because they're going to become a carrier, it's going to be hard to get over that hurdle, don't you think?
Yes, although I don't think people are concerned for others, and people obviously are concerned for themselves. And I think each individual will look, what is the risk that I have, one, to myself, to those I'm care for, and also other people I interact with. And I think almost, the society, the US particularly, will open many of its states. And similar to what we're saying about employees having a choice to go back to the workplace, individuals will have the choice to whether to go back to the barber shop, whether to go to the restaurant, whether to go to socialize with other people. The challenge is going to be, 6 feet, keeping that social distancing. And there's even evidence out there saying that 6 feet isn't enough. There's people saying that 6 feet's way too much. So there's so many contradicting data points. I think what's clear to see is whatever we get told about this virus, within a few days or a week, there's something that contradicts it. And that's
Yeah.
the uncertainty over it, right? And it's not that, yes, the media sensationalizes a lot of these things, but it really is such a challenge because it is so new. We don't know what the long-term impact is. You know, yes, absolutely, it may not be as deadly as what we were first informed or first anticipated. However, there are many families who have been impacted. There are also those who have contacted it, had it, and really not felt that much of an impact. There are those who've got it and been out for weeks and struggled. And, as the studies continue on those who may have recovered, there are going to be side effects that we haven't really anticipated that will probably be with those folks for a period of time. And those are the things that we need to be careful of and concerned about. The World Health Organization also stated there last on the weekend, um, there is no evidence that says that once you get it, you won't be able to get it again. There's nothing that says that, but there's anecdotal evidence that shows if you've had it, you can get it again. In other words, we can't say for sure that you won't get it again, but there's evidence that says that you can. And this virus transforms, morphs into other strains and other things, then who knows what it's going to go. Now, I know I've went off on this tangent to where you were talking about, but in essence, it's the context of the question that you're asking, right? In essence, we don't know what the right answer is, and we have to be careful. And it is going to come down to the individual to actually make a decision. And I think it's interesting to see the various states and how different people behave in those states, um, as to how, business is open. Do people go back to business? Do they not go back to business? Do people who had those jobs go back to those jobs? Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see, what
Yeah,
does transpire.
yeah, this little exchange is just a great example of the two sides here. That for every point you just made, I've heard a counterpoint.
Yeah,
About
yeah,
the antibodies, the all those things. It's just the lack of knowledge, the lack of data. Even though we have more than we did 2 months ago, we still have so little knowledge. But you and I are, and we're not even the ones that are like deep diving into this stuff and the data.
no,
We have a anecdotal evidence. We pick up things from the media. You and I have chosen not to consume so much media because it does, it affects your mental health and emotions. So I think I'm pretty well informed. I'm pretty well read in, and I continue to listen to a lot of the experts. But that's the imagine when we tie this back into workplace and workforce and management and leadership. And as Christina Herrera says, and Joe Sutherland says, what is great leadership? It's about change management, communication. Communication is the key. And we could talk about this from our governmental leaders and as well as our organizational leaders. Boy, most people don't know and don't invest the time to find out the data. They trust others to share with them, and whether that's a media outlet who's giving them a certain message, or whether it's the corporate direction, they're going to trust what leaders say. So I'm really not envious of those folks in those positions, because it's a very challenging time.
yeah, yeah.
And for every point, there's a counterpoint. For every risk, there's another risk. It's one of those wicked problems that Rex Miller talks about. So we're not going to solve it here. But for me, you're right. I think that some of the principles we apply to workplace strategy and workplace and innovation, the things I've talked about for years on my show, and that you talk about an open source workplace, leadership, communication, and then giving individuals choice and flexibility and understanding that everybody has different needs, different perspectives, different vulnerabilities, and somehow wrap up create a culture that brings all those things into account. That's where we need to focus our efforts and try to make it through this thing together.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm glad you segued it back into our stream of
Yeah.
workplace,
Yeah.
and start bringing it back to that. So sort of rolling with that and sort of thinking through. I'm going to throw something at you. We haven't, we never
Oh, good.
rehearsed. We have a big setup. So I'm going to ask you a question, right? What have you given up or lost interest in during this crisis? And we'll leave media to the side. And something that you don't think you'll pick back up whenever the lights go back on, so to speak. Is there anything that sort of pops into your head?
Let's see. I don't know if I won't ever go back to it, because the things I'm missing that I really miss, I want to go back to at some point. The
Hmm.
movies, going to the theater, going to concerts, going to ball games. That's going to be somewhere down the road. That's post vaccine, before all those things probably come back into reality for me. But I guess the lesson I have learned is that I don't need as much that I used to. And I've heard a lot of people say that consumerization, or the consumption of so much stuff. Um, I'm trying to give you an example, and I hate to point out one particular company, but boy, I was always known as the Starbucks guy. I was the
Mm,
guy who would go to Starbucks not once a day, not every morning, 2, 3 times a day. If there was a break in my action, I'd swing by Starbucks, grab a drink, different time of day. Not always caffeinated, sometimes decaf, sometimes low calorie. Not drinking frappuccinos every time, certainly, but just being able to go to Starbucks and sit there for a few minutes and catch up on my phone and drink a nice drink was something that I got really used to. And now, here a month later, I haven't had a Starbucks for a long time. I don't know about you. Were you a big Starbucks or some type of coffee shop guy where you would do that? Because for that's probably one
um,
thing I won't go back to my normal habit, I don't think, now that that's been broken.
Interesting, interesting. So yeah, I have my coffee. I drink bulletproof coffee. It's I do it every morning. I have it before I leave the house, and then I don't really drink that much coffee during the day.
Okay.
But following on from what you said, I think that's the one thing that I think we all are recognizing, right? The amount of things that we do consume, the amount of things that we do buy, through this process, I think we buy things we need or we buy things we want. And I think through this process, we're eliminating things we want to buy things we need. And I think with that, it'll be interesting to see how the mindset shifts as as things open back up and you walk past your Starbucks. Do you want it or do you need it? That's going to be something you ask yourself. And I think with Starbucks and the way you explained it, it was more the experience that you
Yeah.
you went for rather than necessarily the product. And Starbucks has that magnetism, right? It's one of the great things of their product, right? It isn't necessarily their coffee. It's the fact that you can go in and get lost, and you ever go in there to work. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it happens, but you're in an environment full of noise, people packed in together,
Yep.
and we're all able to work, we're able to read, we're able to do whatever it is we need to do in that environment. And I've often asked myself is why can't we replicate that in the workplace? Workplace, you go into these coffee areas and they're all spread out. We need all this distance. And obviously now we do because everyone needs the physical distancing. But in essence, I've always had that, hey, why how can they create that in such a tight, small space? But yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I hope we get back to studying some of those things. It's going to take a while.
Yeah.
There were some really interesting deep dives going on into the human capacity for noise and environment and productivity around those things. And I worry a lot of that's going to be put off to the side as we just kind of just get back to some level of reentry to a work environment. But that was a key. And I heard you say that you were on the live stream earlier this week
Hmm.
with Leisman, Tim Oldman and Joe Sutherland from Magenta. And Tim and Joe were both pretty emphatic about, I hope we don't lose a lot of the great gains we've made over the last decade or so when it comes to agile working strategy and some of these activity-based working, all the things that have really helped organizations. And not all organizations, we were far away from having all organizations embrace these concepts, but we would hate to see a lot of the things that we've done positively in the workplace to create some of the environments you just described, or at least make steps towards taking care of people and giving options and choice. That if we have to go into this world where everything is very strictly, um, distance and measured, and everybody's walking around with their masks on and very fearful, it's going to be hard to get back to that, at least in the near term. But optimism is that we'll not throw out the baby with the bathwater and get back to some normalcy in the coming months, or at least the next year or two. So what about you? Are you giving up? Have you given up anything, or have you stopped doing something other than just consuming things in general? Is there something specific you like? Wow, I used to really depend on this, that, or the other, and now I don't miss it. I think that's the
I tell
question
you,
you asked me.
one thing I don't miss is the commute. I don't miss
Oh,
the commute to work. I definitely do not miss that commute to work.
yeah,
It's a 90-minute, each direction. So that's a 3-hour round trip each day. I do it 3 days a week, but I'm quite happy to take those 9 hours back each day or each week. I'd be happy enough for that. So that's we'll see what happens with that one.
that
Obviously,
is a
given
big
what I
one, and that is a
given,
big one that's going to
yeah,
be interesting to see, because all those work from home surveys that whether it's Leisman or Workplace Evolutionaries put out, there are always questions about that.
yeah,
What do you do with the extra time, or have you noticed? Try to track how long was your commute, and then what have you done with that extra time?
yeah. Well, we do this with the extra time.
Yeah,
That's no people can debate whether it's a good use of the time or not good use of the time. That's
that's
for other
true.
people to decide. But I know you and I both feel good about this and what we both get
That's
out
all
of
that
it.
matters. All that matters,
It's
Steve. You and
hey
me.
no, at least we're on the same page.
So as we head into the
But yeah.
weekend, I mean, where do you think we go from here? I mean, what is this, week 7, week 8? I can't remember. And we've been doing this for at least 7 or 8 weeks, I think now, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Has it
yeah.
been 2 months? I don't know.
No, no, not quite yet. Not quite yet. I think it's like we're a couple of weeks away from 2 months.
Okay,
But
all right, but
we,
still, it
yeah,
feels like a long time, and it feels certainly like the topics we've discussed have shifted, from one thing to another. And now we're into this place where, like you said, for every point there's a counterpoint, or there's like these perspectives. We're still in this period of limited data. I think we've decided we're never going to have conclusive evidence one way or the other. So it's more about focusing on others. Did I share the Seth Godin article the other day where it was like
You did.
the difference between having a long-term perspective where we focus on others and having a short-term perspective where we
Mm,
focus on ourselves? That in marketing, and he's a marketing expert, it's like motivating people using a long-term perspective that you would help
mm,
other people never works
mm,
in marketing. That's why people always put that selfish, ambitious, short-term need, impulse buy, get things done in the short term, and what's best for you. And the communicators of mass media, whether it's marketing something or selling an idea through news media around, and he actually gave some examples around this lockdown and coronavirus. It didn't work to have people social distance. If you said, hey, do it for others, do it for the older people. But if you said, do it for yourself because you're going to get in trouble, you're going to be ill if you don't, that motivated people.
mhm,
So
mhm.
with that concept being what we know about human beings and motivation, workplace leaders, and I hope our conversations in the coming weeks will be, how can we, communicate a message of of I guess practical application of some of these things that we're all talking about, whether it's around the return to the office or working from home and continuing to work from home, the digitization of all this, our digital virtual world, and making the most of that. And also, but I think you and I are both kind of philosophically aligned that we want to focus on others, right? I mean, we're human
No,
beings and
no.
we have our selfish instincts, but we have this kind of more ambitious view of what can we do as workplace leaders to make things better for others and have a longer term perspective, not just about what happens next month, but next year and in the years to come, right? That's
Right,
that's why you do
right,
what you do each day.
right. 100% agree with you. I know that's why it's important to start asking the questions to frame what you can do to help other people in the organization, right? So as workplace leaders, it's the questions we have to be continually asking ourselves. h- How do we provide a better work environment for our employees, irrespective of where they are? That environment has just shifted. It may not be a physical office as it is today. It is a place. It is always a place. So how do we shift those questions to take that work from home as a seat rather than having a assigned seat in an office? And how do we start addressing some of those things? Because go back to what Tim said. He may not have said it as explicitly on your show, but he may have said it in a memo he write, one of his weekly memos. In essence, if you look at what you're doing in your current office, how do you take those principles and apply them to your home environment or whatever it's going to be like coming back to the office? So there's lessons that each individual organization knows that you can turn to and try and apply. And we talked a little bit about it maybe yesterday, the day before. All these days kind of blend into one,
They
where
do.
there's data that organizations have about their workplace, about their employees, how they function, what they do. What can you learn from that information to help employees today as we go through this process? Because what's clear, even when the office is open, not everyone will go back to the office. So we have to be able to support those people in the office and potentially a larger group who are going to remain at home and work from home for the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, whatever that is, because there will be employees that don't feel safe until there is herd immunity. There will be those that will never feel safe again. There will be those that won't feel safe until they've had a vaccine. So, how do we address some of those things, and how do we sort of start building that picture so that we're able to support our organizations? Yeah.
That's why I love the idea of an interactive conversation, and
Hmm.
the live stream we do on Wednesdays at noon Eastern is something that we've gotten a lot of interaction from the audience and Q&A coming in. So if you're watching this, please share your comments below. I know it's YouTube, and we'll come back and look for those comments, but I think that, or tweet something at us, hashtag OSW daily, email. You've got the email behind you there,
Yep. Yep.
Steve.
Yep.
Love your background. You want to give a shout out to a
Thank you.
couple of those companies as
Oh
we
no,
close
absolutely. So
out?
this all belongs to Andrew Sagal, who is a contributor to Open Source Workplace. These are not sponsors. These are people who contribute to Open Source Workplace, so that we just want to help support those these folks and give them some publicity. So I want to thank Andrew, and I want to thank his companies for what they're providing to open source workplace and the community. So yeah, so thank you.
Looking good.
So there we go. Wrap up another week, Mike. Another
Yes,
week in
indeed.
the can, so to speak. So have a great weekend,
You
and
too.
we'll chat Monday.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Steve.
Cheers, mate.